I assumed that summer would be just like any other. As a landscape architect, I was constantly working on projects that kept me occupied, and I spent most of my evenings relaxing at home. I was in my late 40s and had become accustomed to a nice, predictable life in our peaceful suburban community. We spent our weekends taking care of the yard and swinging on the porch in a location where everyone knew one another. Even though it felt a little too peaceful at times, I loved my small piece of the globe. Martin, my neighbor, informed me one day that his daughter Lily would be spending the summer with him. I had lived next door to Martin for almost 10 years. At a university across the nation, his daughter, who is now in her early 20s, was working towards an environmental science degree. Even though I had seen her on occasion over the years during the holidays, she had always seemed like a child to me, someone I knew casually and waved to out of courtesy. By the time Lily showed up, she had changed into a poised, self-assured young lady. We frequently found ourselves conversing at the fence separating our yards because of her kind demeanor and genuine friendliness. I could relate to her enthusiasm for her academics and her love of the outdoors. Her passion recalled me in many aspects of my own early career days. Lily dropped by one late afternoon while I was out front trimming the plants by my driveway. She was holding a notebook and a camera around her neck. She said, "Hello, Daniel," with a relaxed and organic smile. "Would it be possible for me to pick your brain? I would love to hear your thoughts on sustainable landscaping as I work on a research project." The informal chat grew into an hour-long conversation on her school projects, my job, and the influence on the environment. She was perceptive and posed thoughtful queries that caused me to rethink my thinking. Speaking with someone so youthful and full of inquiry was a welcome change. "Thank you, Daniel," she said as we wrapped up, her face lighting up with genuine gratitude. "This was so helpful." "Anytime, Lily," I replied, smiling. "It's nice to see someone so interested in what they're studying. If you need any more help, feel free to drop by." From then on, Lily would occasionally come over to discuss her project, and we grew comfortable around each other. What started as simple conversations turned into shared coffee breaks on my porch, discussing everything from her classes to my career, and soon our conversations began covering more personal territory. Our families, relationships, even regrets. One evening, we found ourselves talking as the sun set, the sky painted in shades of orange and pink. The warm summer breeze and her easy laughter created a strangely serene moment that I hadn't felt in years. It was as if, just for that moment, time had slowed down, and everything was exactly as it was meant to be. After that night, Lily began visiting more often. Sometimes she'd bring me lunch while I was working in the yard, or she'd invite me over to her dad's place when Martin was away, and we'd sit in his backyard, sipping iced tea and sharing stories. There was an unspoken comfort between us, a connection that neither of us acknowledged but both felt. One afternoon, as I finished a project and sat down on the porch to catch my breath, Lily appeared, carrying a small potted plant. "I brought you a thank you gift," she said, her cheeks tinged pink, "for all the help you've given me with my project." It was a little succulent in a handmade pot, delicate and unique, just like her. I laughed, accepting the gift. "Thank you, Lily." "Lily, you didn't have to do that," I said, touched by the gesture. She shrugged, her eyes sparkling. "I wanted to. You've been a good friend this summer." Her words hung in the air, laden with meaning. I felt a warmth in my chest, something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in years. But as quickly as the feeling rose, I pushed it back down, reminding myself that this was Lily, Martin's daughter, a young woman at the beginning of her life. Still, there was an unspoken tension that neither of us addressed, a lingering glance, a touch of hands that lasted a beat too long. As the summer went on, the lines between friendship and something more began to blur. We spent nearly every day together, and soon even Martin noticed the camaraderie we'd developed. He teased us about it, jokingly calling us partners in crime, but his laughter always seemed a bit forced. I could tell he was wondering if there was more to our connection, and truthfully, so was I. One hot evening, after a neighborhood barbecue, Lily and I found ourselves alone in my backyard. Martin had gone home early, and Lily had lingered, helping me clean up the remnants of the party. As we gathered plates and folded chairs, I noticed the quietness between us, a silence that held more weight than any words. "Thank you for all your help tonight," I said, breaking the silence, though my voice sounded unusually tense. She smiled softly, her eyes searching mine. "I don't mind. I like spending time with you, Daniel, more than I probably should." Her admission sent a shock through me, and for a moment I was at a loss for words. I wanted to brush it off, to laugh it away, but the vulnerability in her eyes kept me rooted in place. "Lily," I began, struggling to find the right words, "you know this. It's complicated." She looked down, nodding, but her expression didn't change. Instead, she took a step closer, her hand reaching out to rest gently on my arm. "I know," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "But sometimes, things that feel complicated are just simple." The warmth of her touch was intoxicating, and I felt my resolve beginning to crumble. Part of me wanted to pull away, to stop whatever this was from unfolding. But another part of me, the part that had spent years feeling alone and unfulfilled, longed to give in. After a moment of hesitation, I placed my hand over hers, my heart pounding. "Lily, we can't," I managed, but even as I spoke, I knew my words lacked conviction. Her eyes met mine, filled with an understanding that unnerved me. "I know," she said, stepping back, her face a mixture of regret and sadness. "Maybe it's better if I don't come by so often." My heart sank at the thought, but I knew she was right. We had ventured too close to something dangerous, something that could ruin the quiet, safe lives we had known. The next few weeks passed slowly. Lily stopped coming over, and I threw myself into work, trying to forget the connection we had shared. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had let something extraordinary slip through my fingers. Then, one evening, just as I was beginning to think I might have imagined the whole thing, there was a knock on my door. I opened it to find Lily standing there, her expression guarded but determined. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice steady but soft. "Of course," I replied, stepping aside to let her in. We sat down on the porch, the quiet hum of summer insects filling the air. For a moment, neither of us spoke, but finally Lily broke the silence. "I've missed this," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Being around you." I looked down, the weight of her words pressing down on me. "Lily, we both know this can't happen. It's complicated, like you said." "But maybe it doesn't have to be," she replied, her eyes meeting mine with a fierce determination. "Maybe we're overthinking this." I took a deep breath, my mind racing. "You're young, Lily. You have so much ahead of you. This could ruin everything." She shook her head, her gaze steady. "Daniel, life is complicated no matter what. I know this isn't conventional, but I can't ignore what I feel, and I don't think you can either." Her words hung in the air, and I felt a mix of emotions. Fear, longing, regret. I wanted to tell her she was wrong, that what we felt was fleeting, but deep down, I knew I'd be lying to both of us. As I struggled to find the right words, she leaned forward, pressing her lips to mine in a kiss that was gentle yet filled with the weight of everything we had left unsaid. For a moment, I allowed myself to give in, to feel the rush of emotions I had suppressed all summer. But as quickly as it began, I pulled away, guilt and fear crashing down over me. "I can't do this, Lily," I whispered, my voice trembling. "It's not right. We have to stop." Her expression softened and she nodded, her eyes filled with a sadness that mirrored my own. "I understand," she said quietly, "but I needed you to know how I feel." We sat there in silence for a few moments before she stood up to leave. As I watched her walk away, I knew that what we had shared would stay with me, a memory that would linger long after the summer ended. The following weeks were quiet, almost eerily so. Lily went back to her father's house and kept her distance. Martin, oblivious to everything that had transpired, mentioned over our shared fence one morning that Lily seemed more focused than ever on her studies, preparing to return to school early. He was proud of her, excited to see her chasing her dreams. I nodded along, feigning my usual neighborly interest, but a hollow ache settled in my chest each time her name came up. Despite my best efforts, I couldn't shake the memory of our last night together. Every detail, the touch of her hand, the warmth of her kiss, was etched into my mind, and though I fought to push it down, there was a lingering feeling of something unfinished. My work became my refuge, my only distraction. as I buried myself in projects, hoping the busyness would chase away my thoughts of her. But life has a funny way of bringing back unfinished business. One late afternoon, as the summer began to wind down, I was in my garden when I heard footsteps behind me. I turned, half expecting it to be Martin or maybe another neighbor, but instead it was Lily. She looked different, calmer, more resolved, but there was an unmistakable glimmer in her eyes. "Hey," she greeted softly. "Lily," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. "I thought you'd gone back to school already." She shrugged, a small smile playing on her lips. "I wanted to say goodbye first." Properly. I didn't know what to say, so I simply nodded, gesturing for her to sit with me on the bench by the garden's edge. We sat in silence for a few moments, the air filled with the faint scent of flowers and the sound of distant birds. "I'm leaving tomorrow," she began, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "I thought a lot about us, about this summer." "And?" I asked, not sure if I wanted to hear the answer. She turned to me, her eyes clear and steady. "You're right. What we felt, it was something real, but it wasn't meant to last. I think we both knew that, even if we didn't want to admit it." I felt a strange mixture of relief and sadness wash over me. She was giving me a way to let go, to move on without the weight of regret hanging over me, and yet a part of me still longed to hold on, even if just for a moment longer. "You'll do great things, Lily," I said finally, my voice thick with emotion. "I know you will, and I'm grateful for this summer. For everything." She smiled, a hint of sadness in her eyes. "So am I." As the sun dipped below the horizon, we shared one final embrace, a silent farewell to the connection we'd shared. It was bittersweet, filled with the unspoken understanding that while we may never see each other in the same light again, we had left an indelible mark on each other's lives. And as Lily walked away, leaving our quiet neighborhood behind, I knew that while some chapters in life may end, their impact lingers on. It was a lesson I wouldn't soon forget. As the days turned into weeks, I adjusted to the quiet that followed Lily's departure. Life settled back into its familiar rhythm: work, weekend errands, small chats with Martin. The empty moments where thoughts of Lily would surface began to fill with other things, little by little. Yet every so often I'd catch myself pausing, glancing over at the now vacant guest room, or the spot on the garden bench where we had shared those last moments. Months passed, and winter came. Martin mentioned casually that Lily was doing well at school, thriving in her classes, and talking about spending the summer abroad for an internship. I nodded, offering my congratulations, though my mind drifted, recalling our last conversation. She'd grown up in a matter of months, and part of me wondered if she'd moved on as easily as she seemed. It was just after New Year's when I received an unexpected letter in my mailbox. My name was scrawled across the front in familiar handwriting, and my heart raced as I unfolded it, seeing Lily's name at the bottom. She wrote that she was well and settling into her new life, feeling more at ease than she had in years. But then the tone of the letter shifted. She wrote, "Sometimes I sit by the river on campus and think of our garden, the quiet talks, and those rare moments where everything felt right, even if just for a second. I'll always carry that summer with me, but I know now that it was just a beautiful, brief pause in a bigger story for both of us." In that moment, I understood what she meant. That summer had been a fleeting connection. Beautiful, intense, but meant to be a passing chapter. Her words brought closure, a reminder that our lives had intersected for a reason, but that the future lay along separate paths. I folded the letter, placed it in a drawer, and let the weight of that summer ease from my shoulders. It was a new year, and with it, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. The past had left its mark, but I was ready to move forward, grateful for the memories, but even more grateful for the promise of what lay ahead. In the months that followed, the letter from Lily stayed tucked away in my drawer, read and reread on nights when the quiet felt a little too heavy. I tried to move on, embracing the everyday life I'd crafted for myself. But sometimes, even as I went about my day, I'd feel the ghost of her presence, the soft laughter, the stolen glances, and the electrifying connection we'd shared. One evening, after a particularly long work week, I poured myself a glass of wine and settled into the familiar comfort of my living room. The house was dark and silent, a stark contrast to the summer's warmth and whispers. I let myself sink into the memories just for a moment, wondering if she ever thought back to that time as much as I did. Then a knock echoed through the stillness, pulling me out of my reverie. Surprised, I got up and opened the door to find a familiar face smiling up at me. There, standing with a small suitcase and an all-too-familiar spark in her eyes, was Lily. "Thought I'd stop by," she said, her smile both daring and inviting. "Hope you don't mind." I was speechless, her unexpected presence flooding my mind with a whirlwind of emotions: excitement, curiosity, and a dangerous anticipation. "Lily, what are you doing here?" She shrugged, her gaze locking onto mine. "Summer vacation came early. I thought maybe we could pick up where we left off, if that's all right with you." And in that moment, as I ushered her into the warm glow of the house, I felt the thrill of uncertainty. Perhaps this chapter wasn't finished after all.